little bit about me. You'll see me, I'm a family guy. I've got 4 kids, which I love. I'm very big on global learning experiences, which we'll talk about as we kind of hit the launch part of it. And I just care so much about getting kids invested in the learning because of these guys right here, because my 7-year-old daughter right now loves learning and loves school more than anything in the world, and I don't want her to lose that. Because my son right there, the menace Tucker, who can't sit still, who's the type of kid that we went on a family vacation and we stopped at a hotel in North Carolina on the way down, and at 10 p.m. we're putting the kids down, and all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off and everybody's running out of the building, and my wife and I are saying, Tucker, it's our son, because he doesn't want to sit down for 87% of the day, which is right now the elementary school average of how much students sit per day. And because my youngest son and my young daughter, their future has never been more unknown. And so I'm so interested in what engagement looks like today because of not only my job as a teacher and an innovation specialist, because my job as a dad. You know, we have 70% of the jobs right now that are being replaced by automation. And this quote by Carl Fish, that we're currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. That's my life. My last 2 jobs, an innovation specialist and a K-12 technology staff developer, they didn't exist when I was in high school or middle school. And so my teachers could have never known they were preparing me for that. What I'm worried about, and as we kind of talk about engagement, is I'm worried that we are like Blockbuster, that we are just saying our model has worked and it's always worked and it's worked well. We're just not going to change it. And instead, we're not like Netflix, who said, you know what, the world changed. Cheap entertainment is not $3.50 for a movie. It's $8 streaming for thousands of movies. Fast is not going to a store down the street. It's streaming it live from any device. And convenient is any form and any device at any time. And Netflix changed with the world. Are we changing our engagement with the world? So as we talk about engagement, the principles of learning and engagement are still the same. There's 4 of them, right? If you want students to be engaged, then our teaching practices and what's happening in our classroom has to be social, it has to be human, it has to be language-based, and it has to be meaning-centered. And this is the same when we're talking about Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, and it's the same 50 years ago, and it's the same right now. The principles haven't changed. How people learn hasn't changed either, right? In order for someone to learn, in order for someone to be engaged, they have to have attention. That attention, whether it's interest or necessity, turns into encoding, where we're actually connecting it to other things that we've learned or other experiences, which turns into storage, which we're actually keeping in our short-term, long-term, and working memory. And then actually we can use it. And every time we retrieve that knowledge, it brings attention again. So think about driving, right? It has our attention because we're interested and it's a necessity to our life. Every time we encode when we're learning how to drive, we're thinking about when we rode a go-kart or when we were in a passenger drive seat, and then we start storing that. And every time we retrieve those skills, we get better and better at driving. Well, what does engagement actually look like? Here's Phil Schlechty's levels of engagement. And Schlechty says at the top level is high attention and high commitment. Here's a thing to bring back to your district, your school, your classroom tomorrow. Ask the question, are your students highly attentive? Are they highly committed? If you took away a reward, if you took away grades, or if you took away report cards, or if you took away extra credit, or if you took away contacting their parents, would that attention and commitment still be there? Because the next 2 levels we see a lot in school, strategic compliance and ritual compliance. And so Schlechty's levels of engagement say that strategic compliance and ritual compliance aren't necessarily bad, but they aren't engagement. Students are complying to the system. They're studying because they have a pop quiz tomorrow. They're reading because they're going to be tested on it, not because they want to, not because they're into it. The bottom levels are retreatism and rebellion, and that's where we spend a lot of our attention. We're not going to focus on those today. We're going to focus on those top 3. Next challenge. Same thing here. Winner gets some books, and we'll contact you and have you send me an email. So find the link to Schlechty's Center for Engagement and post it to the chat. It's a wonderful resource. Schlechty's Center for Engagement. Phil Schlechty, who just passed, spent his entire life working around engagement. Post that to the chat. So going back to how engagement connects with this high attention and high commitment, they're quick. They're quick. I'm looking at the chat right now. Joanne, Dan, Chrissy, I love it. When you look at engagement, here's how it measures up to when we learn. If we have high attention and then high commitment, which are those 3 other parts, then we know students are actually engaged. But the problem is a lot of times we get stuck on compliance. How many of you have actually been told that your students should be compliant, that your students should be in rows of desks, that they should be sitting there and not making a peep? But how many of you know your best learning experiences have been messy, that they've been when your attention and commitment was not tied to some grade, but tied to something that you wanted? And so when we think about what our students are doing in our class, the question is, are they compliant or are they engaged? We know when they're rebelling. We know when they're completely disengaged, but it's very hard to have conversations about compliance and engagement. I'm challenging you today to think about whether or not your students are engaged or they're compliant and look at it through the attention, low commitment level. Finally, the engagement cycle here. You have to have attention. If you don't have attention, there's no chance of engagement. And after attention, you have to, as a teacher, start seeing, are they committed? Are they asking questions? Questions shows commitment. Are they asking questions of you, the teacher, of their peers? Are they going online and looking for more information? Are they asking for help and going deeper? Those are signs of commitment. And then when they demonstrate their understanding, are they deterred if they fail or stumble or try something and it doesn't work out? Because if they're deterred by that, that's where your job as a teacher is to guide them and say, that's okay. It's part of the learning process in the engagement cycle. There's tools out there like Remind that boost the social and human connection, where you can connect with your students using this device. Just real quick, and I know I'm going over a little bit right now. At home right now, you know that over 50% of your emails are probably never even opened. You just delete them. But over 99% of text messages are read. Why aren't we sending text messages using Remind to our students? That's that social human connection that technology can take to the next level because it allows us to connect at a different speed than we ever had before. The live feedback in Google and Microsoft 365 allows us to engage with students like never before. Those are the tools that can help take engagement to the next level and continually bringing that attention back to the learning. And so again, think about each one of those students in your classroom. Each of them aren't going to be attentive to maybe the same thing. Different things are going to catch their eye, which is why Genius Hour and 20% time and choice-based activities are so important, because the attention is based on their interest, not what we're deciding for them. Truth number 2, every child in your class is someone else's whole world. Just like I talked about my kids, you have your kids. Technology can transform that connection. It can transform how we engage those students in a daily practice.